Good afternoon. Today, my cabinet colleagues and I met to discuss Canada's response to the latest developments in the trade crisis. Yesterday, in the latest salvo in his trade war, President Trump again...
Canada just fired back with a major warning on tariffs. This could impact everything from your groceries to the price of cars. In his latest speech, Canada's Prime Minister outlined how they'll respond to new trade policies, and it could be a game changer for international business. In this video, I'll break down the key points of the speech, the potential effects on the economy, and how it could impact both companies and consumers. What do you think? Will these tariffs escalate further? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's dive into the details.
Imposed unjustified tariffs on our nation in violation of our existing trade agreements. This time, he targeted the auto industry and the more than 500,000 hardworking, dedicated Canadians that industry supports across our country. The President of the United States is trying to fundamentally restructure his economy, means our economy, and it means the global economy as well.
So Canada's Prime Minister emphasizes the significant impact of the U.S. tariffs on the Canadian auto industry by pointing out that over 500,000 Canadians rely on the auto sector. The quote underscores the high stakes of the dispute. This is crucial for U.S. audiences, as it illustrates just how deeply intertwined the U.S. and Canadian economies are. The tariffs may lead to supply chain disruptions, higher costs, and potential job losses on both sides of the border. While President Trump's actions may be framed as a way to protect U.S. workers, they also risk harming American industries that depend on Canadian goods and workers.
I understand his goal to support American workers, but I disagree with him that this is how to help. With time, it will become apparent that these actions will end up hurting American workers and American consumers.
Here, the speaker acknowledges the U.S. president's intentions while fundamentally disagreeing with the approach. The analysis of how tariffs can negatively affect American workers and consumers is an important counter-narrative to the notion that protectionist policies always benefit domestic industries. As prices rise due to tariffs, U.S. consumers are left paying the price. Moreover, retaliatory tariffs from Canada could also harm American businesses that rely on exports to Canada, ultimately leading to job losses in various sectors. This highlights the complexity of trade wars, where the intended beneficiaries, American workers, may face increased costs and reduced employment opportunities in the long run.
And our response to these latest tariffs is to fight, is to protect, and to build. We will fight the U.S. tariffs with retaliatory trade actions of our own that will have maximum impact in the United States and minimum impacts here in Canada.
Canada's strategic response to the tariffs is one of calculated retaliation. By minimizing domestic impacts while targeting U.S. industries, Canada shows it's aiming for maximum leverage with minimal self-inflicted damage. This careful approach could make the cost of U.S. tariffs more palpable to American workers, potentially swaying public opinion against the trade war. Retaliatory measures will likely hurt American companies, especially in industries like agriculture and manufacturing, which depend on Canadian exports.
Last night, the President of the United States reached out to schedule a call. I appreciate this opportunity to discuss how we can protect our workers and build our economies. I will make clear to the President that those interests are best served by cooperation and mutual respect.
The focus here is on diplomacy, with the Canadian leader expressing a willingness to engage in dialogue to find a resolution. The message highlights the importance of mutual respect and cooperation in achieving long-term economic stability. For U.S. audiences, this could be seen as an opportunity to resolve tensions before they escalate further. Effective negotiations could result in favorable outcomes for both countries, especially in terms of trade agreements, as both economies depend on cross-border trade and cooperation. This emphasizes the importance of balancing national interests with international diplomacy.
I don't want to set unreasonable expectations. The road ahead will be long. There is no silver bullet. There is no quick fix. And I know and I understand that many are feeling anxious and worried about the future. Fundamental change is always unsettling. But I have every confidence in our country.
This statement conveys both realism and reassurance, acknowledging the road to resolving trade conflicts will be lengthy and difficult, but expressing confidence in Canada's resilience. The speaker contrasts this approach with President Trump's seemingly short-term focus. For U.S. viewers, this message suggests that Canada is prepared for a prolonged conflict and is fully committed to its national interest. The mention combination of fundamental change signals that Canada is looking toward long-term strategies for economic independence and stability, positioning the country as determined and steadfast in facing challenges.
The federal government will do everything in its power to protect Canadian workers and businesses. We will be here for you every step of the way. In the past week, my government committed to use every dollar collected from our retaliatory tariffs to protect our workers.
This statement reinforces Canada's commitment to its workforce, outlining a specific plan to use retaliatory tariff revenue to support Canadian workers. It emphasizes a direct and tangible response to U.S. actions. For U.S. viewers, this demonstrates that Canada is not simply reacting passively, but actively working to safeguard its own economic interests. This approach could be a model for other nations facing similar challenges, suggesting that trade revenue could be strategically reinvested to minimize domestic impacts and maintain economic stability.
Our biggest challenge as a country is becoming the most urgent. Over the coming weeks, months, and years, we must fundamentally reimagine our economy. We will need to ensure that Canada can succeed in a drastically different world. The old relationship we had with the United States, based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperation, is over.
The speaker points to a fundamental shift in Canada's economic strategy, acknowledging that the old way of doing things, especially the close economic ties with the U.S., may no longer be viable. For U.S. audiences, that suggests that Canada is planning to reduce its reliance on the U.S. market and build more diversified and resilient trade relationships. The long-term vision, if successful, could lessen U.S. influence over Canadian markets, signaling a shift in regional economic dynamics that could have wider implications for North American trade and investment flows.
We can give ourselves much more than any foreign government, including the United States, can ever take away. We will need to dramatically reduce our reliance on the United States. We will need to pivot our trade relationships elsewhere. And we will need to do things previously thought impossible at speeds we haven't seen in generations. But we can make ourselves more productive and therefore more competitive. We can break down internal trade barriers. We can build a stronger and more resilient economy.
This section underscores Canada's intent to significantly reduce its dependence on U.S. trade by looking to other global markets and enhancing domestic productivity. Canada is preparing for a more diversified and competitive future. For U.S. viewers, this signals a potential loss of a major trading partner, which could have implications for the U.S. industries that rely heavily on exports to Canada. The reference to doing things previously thought impossible hints at rapid innovation and restructuring, possibly opening doors to new markets and industries that were previously underdeveloped.
We will create an all-in-Canada network of supply chains for the auto manufacturing components straight through to Canadian steel and aluminum and critical minerals. And we committed today to create similar strategies in other sectors that are under threat from President Trump's tariffs.
The focus on creating a completely domestic supply chain network for key industries like auto manufacturing and steel shows that Canada is serious about becoming self-sufficient. For the United States, this poses a significant challenge as Canada's shift toward domestic production could lead to less reliance on U.S. suppliers. Additionally, Canada's focus on critical minerals, vital for industries like technology and renewable energy, positions the country as an emerging global competitor, particularly in sectors where the U.S. also has a vested interest.
All of these initiatives will go a very long way to offsetting the costs of these tariffs if they are permanent, and they will help to realize our potential as a nation. But there's even more to do. And that's why I chose to go to France and the United Kingdom, two long-standing and reliable partners, friends, and allies of Canada. And it's why the time will come for a broad renegotiation of our security and trade relationship with the United States.
This statement reflects Canada's forward-thinking approach to the long-term impact of U.S. tariffs. By implementing various strategies to offset the financial burden of these tariffs, Canada aims to remain competitive despite ongoing trade challenges. For U.S. audiences, this signals that Canada is preparing for the possibility of a prolonged trade conflict and is actively planning to mitigate its economic impact. The reference to realizing our potential suggests that Canada views this as an opportunity to reshape its economy for the future, even in the face of adversity.
It's my solemn promise that when President Trump threatens us again, we will fight back with everything we have to get the best deal for Canada. We will build an independent future for our country stronger than ever. We will stand up for Canadian workers. We will stand up for Canadian business. We will stand up for our history, our values. We will stand together to build Canada strong, Canada free. free Canada forever.
This statement highlights Canada's resolve to stand firm against further U.S. threats. The speaker emphasizes the country's commitment to getting the best deal possible, signaling that Canada will not back down in the face of economic pressure. For United States businesses, this could result in further disruptions in trade, especially if retaliatory measures intensify. It also underscores the fact that Canada views itself as an equal economic partner, one that will not be easily coerced into unfavorable trade conditions.
Can you be more specific about what your counter plan is next week when the auto tariffs come in? Specifically, how much in terms of tariff measures you're going to take on what portion of American goods and what non-tariff measures you'll use?
This is a negotiation, and we know that there was going to be an initiative on automobiles. It was brought forward to yesterday. It was expected around the same time as the reciprocal tariffs on the 2nd of April. Those initiatives, just to be clear, apply to all countries in the world. So it's not unique in and of versus Canada or versus Mexico. We have the best deal of a bad deal, is the way I would term it, within what the Americans have proposed.
Canada's pledge to build a more independent future reflects a shift away from traditional economic dependencies, particularly in its reliance on the U.S. market. This move is likely to have broad implications for U.S.-Canada relations, as it challenges the assumption that the U.S. holds economic leverage over Canada. For American companies, this could mean a shift in trade dynamics, with Canada seeking more diversified relationships with other nations that align with its national values and economic interests.
The second is that we know that there are going to be these reciprocal tariffs, as you referenced in your question, on the 2nd of April, as well as there are potential tariffs, or likely tariffs, I would put it, with respect to other, quote, strategic sectors to the Americans: forestry, lumber, pharmaceuticals, semiconductors. There was a comma after that. I'm sorry, it was a very long set of conditions, but it was to set up the point. We have a number of measures that we can take in response to those initiatives. In our judgment, certainly my judgment, it doesn't make sense when there's a series of U.S. initiatives that are going to come in relatively rapid succession to respond to each of them. We're going to know a lot more in a week, and we will respond then. And in a negotiation, it doesn't make sense to tip your hand and say what you're going to do going forward.
Canada's response to the U.S. auto tariffs reveals a strategic, targeted approach aimed at applying maximum pressure on the United States while minimizing damage to its own economy. Instead of blanket tariffs, Canada plans to focus on specific sectors, selecting U.S. products to target carefully, which could disrupt industries reliant on Canadian trade, especially in the auto sector. With retaliatory tariffs expected around April, this move intensifies economic tensions. Furthermore, Canada emphasizes that U.S. tariffs apply globally, not just to Canada and Mexico, suggesting the wider global repercussions. For U.S. businesses and consumers, this could mean higher costs, disrupted supply chains, and a prolonged period of trade uncertainty, while Canada positions itself to protect its interests within a challenging negotiation environment. So Canada's retaliation tariffs could reshape international trade. This is something you'll want to keep an eye on. If you found this breakdown useful, hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe for more updates on global trade and economic news. And what do you think? Will these tariffs lead to more tension or a resolution? Share your thoughts below. In our next video, I'll dive into the potential long-term impacts of these tariffs on businesses. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.
Thank you.